Hello and welcome to the two-man power trip of wrestling. I'm your host, JP John Poz. With me today, very special guest, director, a legendary producer, an Emmy winner. He worked for the WWE, worked for MLW, worked for TNA. He's done it all. He is Mr. David Sahadi. Welcome to two-man power trip. How you doing?
Dude, thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
What's going on in your world? Tell us about the new book.
The new book is about my father, who was the greatest inspiration in my life. He taught me everything. He was my light, my God, my mentor, the person I love more than anybody else in my life. So the book is called My Dad, My Dying Son, SUN, and it chronicles his history being a legendary sports writer and my chapters, which are when he had a horrific fall back in October of 2020 and nearly died. And I brought him home from the hospital 6 weeks later and nursed him back to health. And he lived another 2.5 years. And bless that, it's triple overtime. But so the book starts with chapter one, the day I bring him back from the hospital, and he has no recollection of where we are or who I am. And that was one of the fears the doctors had. The even numbered chapters are excerpts from the 31 books he's written, condensed to 7 to 10 pages. So it's alternating chapters, and there's a connection between each chapter. For instance, chapter one, when I bring him home, and for 1 minute, he remembers that it's me, David, not my older brother, Joseph. We ended by saying we were praying for a miracle. Chapter two is his book from the long past, and it's a miracle in Miami. So there's a thread throughout every single chapter. One more thread is chapter three. He didn't start speaking until I played Frank Sinatra for him on the stereo. And then he was singing the lines before Frank was. So I knew I had what we call in wrestling a hope spot and went to bed happy. Chapter four is his words, was Frank Sinatra, Bruno Sammartino's real life manager. So there's a lot of sports stories in there, a lot of wrestling stories, but it's really a book about love and loss and connection between two people. In this case, my dad and myself, but it could be about a husband and a wife or a parent and a child. It's just an amazing book, I think, on the concept of.
And the connection with you and your dad is great. I mean, I had a great relationship with my dad too, but that kind of resonates with me a lot. The relationship, dad and son, big time.
Yes, I'm a daddy, and I loved him more than anybody else in life. I would say he was the greatest man I'd ever know and the greatest dad anybody would be blessed to have. And even Mike Tenay, the now Hall of Famer,
Yep.
said to me, David, I've never seen a greater connection between a father and a son than you and Papa Lou. So this book is about that connection. And again, half the chapters I write about his recovery starting in 2020 when I brought him home till the day he, rises, has a miraculous recovery, and then he has a quick demise. His alternating chapters are from excerpts from his books. So it's just like they go from 1965 to 1983 to 1972, but there is a thread between each chapter. So it's his words in one chapter, my words in another, but there's a connection between them both.
And Mike Tenay said that he rather like some people dream of being Joe Namath per se, just like maybe your dad had a great book about him, but some people want to be Namath. He said I wanted to be Lou Sahadi. So very interesting. Mike Tenay has a nice little line in there.
That meant more to me than you could ever know. And the fact that Mike Tenay, a friend of mine, actually wrote the foreword to this book just speaks volumes for the love that Mike had for my father and myself, as well as the love that we have for Mike. They formed a very special connection too when they first met.
When you look at it too, a lot of people I'm sure wanted to be like your dad, right? I mean, legendary writer, wrote all those famous books. I mean, he's not the only one, right? I mean, a lot of people probably want to be like your dad.
I want to be like my dad when I was young. I mean, he took me to all these great sporting events, all these Super Bowls. He introduced me to Cassius Clay before he was Muhammad Ali when I was a child. And I'm like, my dad's a rock star. When I grew older, as I said, I realized he was more than a rock star. He was also a great man, wonderful father who cared about nothing more than his children. That was the most important thing in his life. And that's why he worked so hard. He worked to provide his children with a better life than he had when he was a child. And he did so.
Was this book hard to write? Was it, because you're obviously going to go through a lot of emotions. Was it difficult?
Well, to be honest, I wanted to write this book when my dad was still alive. And unfortunately, he passed sooner than I wanted. But, he lived triple overtime, being 92 and a half years old. So I wrote it after he was gone. It was hard to start this book because I was mourning for 3 months after he passed. I was probably clinically depressed, but not doing anything stupid. And the minute I started writing this book, it was so easy to do. It was a great catharsis, a great healing for me because once I started, I wrote this book in 6 weeks.
Wow.
And I spent 2 months, tweaking it as you always want to do, being a perfectionist. But it was so easy to write, and it got me out of that funk, got me out of that state of depression. So it was so easy to write. It was just hard to get started writing this book. That's all.
When you look at it, are you going through the emotions when you're writing it? Are you reliving it, so to speak, as you're writing and putting it together?
Amazingly so, John. And it's I don't want to say it's kind of sad, but I didn't read many of my dad's books when I was growing up. I read his magazine articles. He wrote over 20,000 magazine articles. He published monthly magazines for 4 different sports. But I was reading his books to condense them down to 7 to 10 pages. And I realized what a wonderful writer he was. And with great empathy, I was able to feel what he was feeling at that time. For instance, when he wrote that article about Frank Sinatra, was he Bruno Sammartino's real life manager? That was in 1964, and I was just 3 years old. And I felt everything my dad was saying and the way he painted the picture of Julie's famous nightclub in New York. I visualized everything. So it was like, wow, my dad was such a great writer. I knew he was prolific and good, but I didn't realize what a great writer he was until I read his books to create this book.
When you look at it, though, was he really Bruno Sammartino's manager, Frank
Yeah,
Sinatra?
that is to be determined because as you're reading the book, there was a connection with Vince Sr., with Frank Sinatra. Bruno Sammartino would always meet Frank whenever he was in New York or LA. They were very close. Um, Julie's is such a say back in the day, it's maybe a little mafia owned. There's rumors that Frank Sinatra is part of the mafia.
Yep.
Maybe there's a reason why Bruno Sammartino was a world champion for Vince Sr. for 6 straight years. I don't know. So
Yes.
my dad's article even ends that saying maybe we should know why Bruno had to call Frank at that time when he nearly died drowning in the Pacific Ocean while shooting a movie.
Yeah, very interesting. All the little connections and ties and stuff. Yeah. And we know Sinatra did not want The Godfather to be made. So there's got to be a reason behind that, too.
Yes, and he rose to fame quite quickly, did he not?
Yes.
So
Yes.
maybe there's
Very.
a connection there with that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So it's just so interesting. Like if you look at like your dad's career, like obviously the Namath book, the Jets book. I mean, there's so much good stuff from him. It's ridiculous to kind of almost condense it down to 710. It's crazy, right?
It was hard, but I did my best to do that using his words, of course, not my words. And you do convey the short story about that book, but it also makes you want to buy that book or read that book. And one thing I love about this book is that it's not just about, sports moments and wrestling moments and all these iconic legends in the fields of sports and entertainment, but it's also a story of love and loss, that anybody can relate to. And it's almost two stories being told in a parallel time with a connection throughout each chapter.
Were you a big sports guy, like growing up and stuff? Like, were you as into it, obviously, as he was?
Yes, my dad got me into sports. He also got me my first job in television at NBC Sports. And because I loved what I was doing, loving sports, working in television, I ascended very well because it was a joy to work in NBC Sports. It wasn't a burden. I was like around other celebrities such as Bob Costas and Dick Ebersol, O.J. Simpson, Ahmad Rashad. So my father got me that first job, and because I liked what I was doing, I just skyrocketed from there.
You were a statistician or a logger, if you will, when you first
I was a
started?
logger at first, and here's my vanity back in my youth. I would tell people, yeah, I'm making $20 an hour working at NBC. That was true, but it was one day a week, 3 hours for one football game, and that was it. It was $60 for the day. But saying I'm making $20 an hour sounds really good.
Yeah.
But because I liked football and liked what I was doing. People took notice of that and they saw my enthusiasm and passion. And I was able to rise very fast. I became the youngest head of on-air sports promotion at NBC Sports. I was half the age of my counterparts at NBC. At CBS, at Fox, at ABC, and that was quite an honor. But here's a lesson for all the kids out there. If you don't know what you want to do in life, do what I did. My dad got me a job in something that I loved, television and sports, and I ascended really well. So if you're young and you're just out of college and you don't know what you want to do, think about what brings you joy and passion in life and find an entry level job in that position, and you will ascend mightily because you're in a field, a profession of which you love personally.
That is great advice. Very true. Because if you're passionate about something, they say you don't really work. You know what I mean? You
Yeah,
love it so much, you're just so into it.
exactly.
Is it pressure with the last name and you're getting into sports and you're kind of not so to speak following his footsteps, but you're kind of following his footsteps? Is that a lot of pressure, or you just like took it and ran?
I just took it and ran. It wasn't pressure at all because my dad was a legend back then. He was known everywhere he went, in the sports world. Um, but I just took it and ran, and I became, I don't want to say legend, even though people say that, but I became somebody who's well known in the world of professional wrestling, somebody who reinvented the way post production packages and openings for pay per views were done and how commercials were done as well. So my dad had his great claim to fame, the most prolific sports writer of his generation from the mid 60s to the mid 90s. And I had my fame in wrestling from the mid 90s until now. So in his book about Willie Mays, which I actually made it 12 pages long, so it was a very good thing. There was a moment where Willie Mays was playing baseball with his father, and his father was aging, and Willie Mays realized that he became greater than his father at that one moment. And his dad did not mind whatsoever. So when my dad's career was declining a little bit, and I was rising as a shining star in the wrestling world, my dad had no envy at all. He had joy. He was so proud that the son that he mentored and raised found critical acclaim and success and loved what he was doing. There was not a bit of envy with him whatsoever. He was just proud of the son that he raised and mentored.
How did you get into WWE? Like, how did you get into wrestling? Because you're like so successful at NBC. How did they let you go, or did you want to kind of leave and move on?
I didn't want to leave, but I'm going to answer your first question and continue about when I first got to WWE.
Okay.
I was working at NBC Sports for 4 years. And there was a producer there named John Filippelli. He was a
Oh
big
yeah.
baseball producer. Yeah,
Yep. I know
he
Flip.
left.
Yep.
Yeah, Flip, great guy, great guy. He's the one who got me my job
Oh,
at
awesome.
WWF at the time, and he got me over there to meet Vince, and they made me an offer, and it was twice as much of what I was making at NBC. And I asked Ken Shands, the number two guy in command, if he would like make a counter offer, because I would have stayed at NBC for just half that amount. And he didn't do that. He said, I'm not going to give you any offer. I know you're getting paid well below your peers, but you should want to be here because it's NBC. And then I said, okay, well, here's my 2 weeks notice. And he was stunned. He thought I was calling a bluff. So now my second to last day, and Dick Ebersol, the head of NBC Sports, comes back and says, David, it kind of hurts a bit because I'm good friends with Vince. And, he's taking you away, but I'll match Vince's offer for you to stay. And I said, Dick, I would have stayed for half the amount. But I was told no by Ken Shanzer. And I gave my word to Vince, so I am not going to renege on that word right now. I gave him my word, and I'm a man of loyalty and integrity. And he said, well, I hate to see you go, but, I wish you good luck. And then I go to WWF. My first day on the job is in Regina, Canada. And I go from working with these stars in sports like Don Mattingly, Michael Jordan, Charles Barkley, and there is Duke the Dumpster Josie, Doink the Clown, Kamal, and I'm like, what the hell am I getting into? This is kind of crazy.
Yep.
But one thing I did bring there was a sports mentality. So the first thing I started to do was present these wrestlers not as cartoony characters, but as real athletes that are really doing incredible athletic feats in that ring. You have no idea. The first attitude spot that I did, the first three lines are, I know what you're thinking. I'm not really a wrestler. I'm not really an athlete. I'm just a wrestler. Well, blah, 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 blah. And that gave them credibility. And that was the beginning of the Attitude Era. So me bringing that sports mentality to WWF at that time, I think helped lead to the Attitude Era because we started making everything real and not like cartoony and, ha ha comedy.
So who did you interview with at WWE? Kevin Dunn, or was it, or
No,
was
and
it?
here's a great story that now you mentioned Kevin Dunn. I interviewed with Flip and Vince, and that was
Oh,
it. And less than 1 month in, I'm in New York City. I'm working on the first ever opening for Monday Night Raw, and Kevin Dunn calls me and says, "David, Flip gone, John so and so gone, Jane Doe gone." And it seemed like a scene from The Godfather 1 when like Al Pacino was whacking off everybody that betrayed him.
yeah.
And Kevin Dunn says, "Well, if I had my way, you'd be done too. But Vince wants to give you a chance, so this opening for Raw better be effing good," and hung up the phone. And I'm like, "Oh geez, can I get my job at NBC back?" This does not sound very good
Yeah.
whatsoever.
Yeah.
Because
What the
20
hell?
people I knew there all got fired on the same day. And then they saw the open, and I think they wanted me to fail the production people because they played it very low. And Vince saw that and then did the old silence for a minute, walks back, gets a cup of coffee, pours it, 1 pack of sweet and low, 2 packs of sweet and low. He stirs it. And to me, this 2 minutes feels like 5 minutes. And he walks up there and says, "Play it again." It plays, and nobody's saying a word when it's over. And then Vince looks down for 2 minutes. And I'm like, okay, well, I probably can't get my job back at NBC, but maybe I can do something else. But Vince finally says, "Well, what do you all think?" And Bruce Pritchard, to his credit, was the first person who said, "Well, I like that. It's different." And somebody else said, "Yes, I like the music too." And then the third person added, "I love the police siren at the end." So Vince says, "Okay, let's go with it." And then that was what saved my job there. And then Kevin Dunn and I became very good friends after that. But I was like the outside guy coming in. After other outside guys that came in, kind of leapfrogged over them and got fired, they were ready to put me on the firing block too. But I survived. And then I, blossomed after that.
What is Kevin Dunn's problem? What's going on with him?
Kevin's misunderstood. The bad things you hear about him are probably real. I won't say bad things about Kevin Dunn, but he treated me very well, and so did Vince, until I decided to leave to take my sabbatical. So to Vince, I was a golden boy. To Kevin Dunn, I was somebody who can say, "Hey, you have a task to do this job." And Kevin trusted me that I would even do a great job without even running it by him. So Kevin Dunn was very talented, and he rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, but he was always good with me. So I don't want to say anything bad about Kevin Dunn because of that reason.
I've had some obviously much smaller scale interactions with him, and he was great with me. So,
Yeah.
and super nice and super
Yeah.
professional. So when people say bad stuff about him, I was like, well, maybe that's their opinion of him, or they had a bad undertaking with him or something. But even I was talking to Todd Pettengill, he was saying he loved Kevin Dunn. So I
Yeah.
mean, I guess everybody's different as far as their relationship with him.
Exactly. It's how you present yourself to Kevin. And if Kevin can trust you and knows that you're good at what you do, he'll take care of you. If Kevin thinks that you're slacking off, whatever, he'll lay the hammer down really hard. But again, I treat people by the way they treat me. And Kevin treated me well, and so did Vince. So I have nothing but respect for them both.
When you're like doing that and you're going through, I mean, what's the pressure like as far as like do this video package or you're fired? And by the way, it better be the best thing you've ever done. Like, I mean, that's like you just get thrown right in. Jeez Louise, right into the fire.
That first Raw opening, and I did the next four that followed, but that was so much pressure. So it's like, it better be good to hang up. But after they liked that, then everything I did afterwards was like, I didn't feel pressure at all. And it got to a point after about 1 year where I could do spots without even running them by Vince because they trusted me that much. And I did stuff that was outside the box because I wanted to make wrestling different, make it new, make it feel relevant. Again, add that kind of sports feel to it and just entertain people. And I was doing spots where, they were airing outside of WWE. So I was making sure there were spots that would appeal to somebody who's watching ESPN or CNN or Fox or whatever was out there on the cross channel spots. And you wouldn't even know for the first 10 or 15 seconds what these spots were about, because they weren't catered to a wrestling audience. They were catered to a sports audience or a news audience. And I think that helped the growth of that Attitude Era as well, because I showed these wrestlers as fish out of water like halfway through, and they were entertaining spots. And people might have said, I don't watch wrestling, but that spot entertained me. So I might give it a sample, I might give it a shot. So I felt no pressure after that first Raw thing at all.
What was it like meeting with Vince? Because you always hear these things about the interview, how like he kind of is a different interviewer than other people tend to be. Like he'll almost like drill you, but then let you kind of sit back and almost like explain yourself to him in a different way, almost like salesman-ish, like sell me on yourself kind of thing.
Yeah, and that's how Vince is. And I sold myself very early on, which is good. But Vince also made sure that when he saw that I wasn't doing things well, that he would, like, lay the hammer on me. For instance, the third opening we did for Raw, the second one was Raw on the Roof. The third one was the abandoned warehouse with the ring
Yeah.
on fire. Raw is war, shots of imagery of war in the background. Vince comes there and it's cold, and the catering was late. And he just laid into me in front of all the wrestlers. How do you not treat these guys as well? How do you not have this, that, and that? And I realized that he wasn't doing that to lay the hammer down on me, but he was showing his wrestlers that I have your back. So he kind of did that to me with a wink and a nod. He wasn't really mad at me, but he wanted to make sure the wrestlers knew
Right.
that Vince cared about them. And that was a mistake on the part of the caterer getting there late.
Interesting. Now, Raw on the Roof. I mean, that's so much different too. That is that your idea? Hey, let's do the roof. Let's do something different, or is that like a Vince thing? If a Vince directed it?
That was my idea, but I had no concept on like a storyboard A, B, C, D, E. I just said, let's just shoot some fun stuff. All these guys doing different things. Shawn Michaels dancing on top of the roof, Razor Ramon coming out through this thing. P.S. Michael Hayes singing with the band on there. And I said, I'll figure out a way to put this all together, make it all make sense. So that was a concept where I just wanted to shoot a bunch of fun, random stuff on top of the roof and have a helicopter there as well. And then I piece it all together in post.
Do they tell you like, hey, it's I want this 60 seconds, or is it just kind of up to you to figure out how long the opening should be?
Well, I always feel openings should be 30 seconds or less. I felt that way back then. I feel that way right now. I think the opening we have right now for Impact Wrestling is a little bit too long, but we're changing that. But they should be short. When it came to doing the commercials, they were a hard 30 or 60 seconds. When it came to doing my most favorite things, which were the openings for all the pay-per-views, special WrestleMania, they could be 2 to 2.5 minutes. It didn't matter. I had whatever time I wanted to get across what I wanted to do. And those are some of the favorite things I did in my career, because I knew that when somebody's watching this opening video of the pay-per-view, they already bought that. They're not going anywhere. So I didn't do like a card, type opening. I did things that were so far outside the box, like the Freddie Fellini stuff, or like, stuff where, it's this stats about what's happening in the world today. Just things that were so imagery, and you put them together in a way that made you feel. People felt sorrow, they felt joy, they felt a little fear or eeriness, or they felt love whenever they saw each one of these things. I tried to make them each different because, again, the crowd already bought the pay-per-view. So do something in the beginning that's entertaining and outside the box.
When you're putting this together, and like, is it storyboard in your mind, or do you have to like sell it to Vince and Kevin Dunn and then put it together? You know what I mean? Like, is it in your mind, or is it like out for everybody to see? Like, this is exactly what we're doing.
It's pretty much in my mind. I'll give Vince the general gist, but let's take the Attitude commercial for starters. That was one where the wrestler said, as I mentioned earlier, I know what you're thinking. I'm not really an athlete. I'm just a wrestler. Well, that was the beginning of the Attitude Era. That was the first time we used the word attitude and the first time we used the scratch logo. I pitched that to Vince. He didn't like the idea. Kevin Dunn said, David, go ahead and do it anyway. He'll like it when he sees it. And sure enough, Vince loved the spot. Then about 2 months later, I'm like, I want to do a sequel. I want to do a spot with the legends, with Freddie Blassie, Gorilla Monsoon, Ernie Ladd,
Yes.
Killer Kowalski, etc. And I get a call halfway through the shoot from Kevin Dunn saying, David, Vince called me and wants to know why you're in Albany with the old timers, with the new generation now. And I told Vince that, Sahadi's got a good track record, so just trust him. And Vince, 3 days later, when he came to see that spot, he wanted to hate that. He came in the studio, the walk, this, and he goes, play the spot. And 10 seconds in, he's like, oh, God. 20 seconds in, oh, gosh. Oh, yeah. Before the tag page even airs, Vince leaves the room. And I turn to Shane. I say, what does that mean? And Shane says, you got him, Sahadi. You got him. And you might have heard the story before, but I walk outside the studio and Vince is sitting on the ground, on the cold concrete, crying his eyes out, saying, thank you, David, thank you. I went upstairs and told Kevin Dunn. He says, I can't wait to see the spot. 20 minutes later, Vince is in a stairwell, sitting down, crying, saying, thank you, thank you. And it took me a couple of years to try to understand why I hit Vince on such a deep emotional level, because the spot was a passing of the torch from the old generation to the younger guys.
Yep.
It even says at one point, I never did a moonsault, no walk the top rope. We never flew through the air. So it was a passing of the torch from the old generation to the new superstars. Vince probably felt that as a passing of the torch from Vince Sr. to himself, Vince Jr. And that's why it was so emotional for him.
Man, those videos are awesome. Like, just being a fan for so long, it's just like, man, like, who's ever doing these videos? They pull at the heartstrings. Even if the owner of the company, they're pulling at the heartstrings.
Yeah, thank you. I always like to evoke emotion. And it's funny because my first day on the job, Vince said, David, what we do here is all about emotion. And he was referring to like the matches and the storylines leading up to the matches. But I took that to everything I was doing. As I said before, every opening that I did for a pay-per-view, every commercial spot that I did, I wanted people to feel something from that. A myriad of emotions. It didn't matter which one it was each time, but I wanted people to feel something. So I took what Vince said, that's all about emotion, and made sure that every spot I did evoked some kind of emotion out of somebody.
You almost don't realize how important like some of those videos are, because they get you hooked without even watching or seeing the matches yet. You know what I mean? Or even knowing
Yeah,
what's going to happen. It gets you hooked, and you kind of just like are like, okay, this is going to be good, or like, all right, I'm invested.
yeah. And it's amazing the power that we all have with what we do. And I'll give you an example about Ric Flair's last match, which I directed last year, a year ago, July, I should say. But this is not my ego speaking. My ego speaking 20 years ago, being like, yeah, yeah. But I go backstage when it's over, and I'm talking to the Undertaker, and he's like, David, Sahadi, haven't seen you in forever. How are you? Great. Talk to Bret Hart, talk to Mick Foley. When I'm done talking to the big guys, there are a couple of wrestlers that are there, still in the wrestling era, and they're like, are you the David Sahadi? And now it's to humble me. So I'm like, yes, it is. And they're like, I'm here tonight because of you. And I'm like, how? I didn't book the show. I just directed it. And they say, you don't understand. When I was growing up, I saw your videos. I saw your packages. I saw your Highway to Hell thing with The Undertaker and Stone Cold.
Yeah.
Those video packages that you did made me want to become a wrestler. So because of what you did, I'm here right now. And I was just like, how do you respond to that? It's just like you affected somebody's life that you didn't even know in a very positive way. It's very humbling and satisfying, but it's also very humbling too.
Yeah, if you look at it, even that Highway to Hell, I went to that show. I was at MSG, but the build up to it is awesome. And ACDC, I mean, it's literally, it's like perfect. Is that your idea to use Highway to Hell, or Vince, or like whose idea?
That was not my idea. It was but I was tasked with putting the video images to that. So they
Awesome.
had already
Yeah.
procured the rights of that song, and I just had to make a video for that song.
Oh man, what goes through your head like when you put it together? Like it's perfect. Obviously, literally, they're on the highway to hell. They're on the highway to
Yeah,
SummerSlam, and Undertaker is kind of evil, even though he's kind of good. And Austin. I mean, it's like the perfect storm of a great theme, but
yeah.
also of everything kind of ties together.
Music and imagery, when tied together, can create something very special. And when I heard about Highway to Hell, it's just like, wow, okay. So those two guys, pyro everywhere, explosions. Who doesn't love seeing explosions? And like, things blow up and cars on fire. So it was just fun. All these images came in my head of what I wanted to shoot. And I shot, Undertaker on one night separately and Stone Cold on another, and put them all together to make it seem like they were there on the same location. But it's fun because I love pyrotechnics. I like blowing things up.
Man, it's awesome when you do like that. Even with Vince, like, what's the reaction of the guys? Is Undertaker or Austin say anything like, "Man, that was awesome," or like, did the guys mention it to you?
Yes, they do. And they understood that me doing spots, showing them in a good light or in a different way would put over their characters as well. You mentioned The Undertaker. He was probably my most favorite wrestler to ever work with of all time because every shoot we did would be in an abandoned warehouse. And we did about 20 at night from dusk till dawn. And he knew that. And I call him and I would say, Mark, we have a shoot next week. He goes, I know, some warehouse in Connecticut. I'm like, yeah. I have a trailer for you. I'll have a PA, anything that you want. He would say, David, all I need is a case of Coors Light and a bottle of Jack Daniels. And he was such a pro, because would go out there and do it a take. And it'd be like, David, what do you think? And I'm like, Mark, you tell me. And he goes, that's pretty cool. And I said, yeah, we're going to reset the camera now, reload the pyro. And he's like, how long would that take? And I'd say about 20 minutes. And he said, just have somebody knock on my trailer 1 minute before you need me. And he was always there on time. And these warehouses weren't heated. He never once complained because he knew that these images that we did with him would last forever. And they still use a lot of those images right now today of all
Yeah,
these colors and
priceless.
rhythms. Yeah. So, I mean, what a great guy. Never once complained when he could have.
I'm just curious, like, with even with Vince, like, does he say like, "Hey, you made me cry," or "Hey, you made me get emotional," or they don't mention that part? They just say, "Great video." You know what I
Oh,
mean?
no. Yeah, yeah. Vince would never tell you that made me cry. Vince would just say, like, good job, pal. Something like that. But one of my favorite things with Vince was that we had a routine every Friday before work was over and would go to the gym. Vince always had me come over to his office like the last half hour of his day to pitch to him some creative idea I had. And I'm very animated. I'm from New York. So I'm like, we do this and we do that. It's like the spot for Rumble that was Field of Dreams. I'm like, so Vince, you got this guy in the cornfield. He's like, no, chopping down the corn. He hears, if you build it, they will come. Just like Field of Dreams. And I say, Vince, then he's nailing this, doing that. The camera rises. And all of a sudden you see there is a giant ring in the middle of this cornfield. And Vince is just like, he is in heaven hearing the way I pitched ideas. So I loved those Fridays with Vince. It's almost a book there, by the way, Fridays with Vince, because he
Yeah,
just loved my enthusiasm and passion and the way I pitch him. Because again, I'm not sure if this is audio video, but I would stand up and be like this. So Vince, and I think he marveled at not just the idea, but my enthusiasm in pitching it to him.
right. He loved like, "Yeah, this guy's energy is great.
Yeah.
Like, he's really into this. Like, he's
And
passionate
he
about this."
sees his vision, he believes in it, so I'm going to let him do it.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. That is a great book idea you should do. That should be the next one, Fridays with Vince, and just go through your creative pitches with Vince. I think it would people would love that.
Oh, the next one is called Backstage Pass. And it's written from
Okay,
the
so yeah.
point of somebody in production, because wrestlers have written books, promoters have written books, wrestling writers have written books, but nobody from behind the scenes from production has ever written one. And I have a lot of stories to tell that nobody has ever heard.
That's awesome. When is that gonna be coming out?
I just started that last night.
Oh,
And I'm
okay.
racing. I'm racing through this. I got the first two lines done, but
Nice.
I have the whole idea. I've written down like all the chapters about NBC, leaving NBC first week with WWE, Attitude Era, this and that, talking about certain wrestlers, why I left WWE, and there were some amazing stories. I'm not going to bury anybody. It's not going to be negative, but there will be some stuff that make people think like, holy shit, that guy was not the nicest guy around, or that guy was a tough talent to work with. I'm just going to be honest. And again, there are so many stories that nobody has heard that will be in this book, because nobody has written a book from that perspective in wrestling.
Right. And nobody's lived your life and your story there. That's awesome. Yeah, that's definitely something to look forward to.
Yes.
Now that Attitude Era, that video, with the thorn in her eye and the smoke comes up and Austin comes around the corner.
Yeah.
To me as a fan, like WW is dominating, the 83 weeks of dominance, all this other stuff. But then you see that and you're like, okay, this is different now. Okay, now somebody else is starting to be cooler. You know what I mean? Like they're the cool kids on the block now. Like that kind of was a big change for them.
Yeah, because we were doing things that nobody did before. We were pushing the envelope and going outside the box, and that's why we're gaining so much attention. And then the character development followed that. We started creating real characters that you can believe in, like Stone Cold Steve Austin. I mean, what blue collar worker wouldn't love doing that to their boss?
Right.
And Stone Cold did, and the crowd loved that because they wanted to do that themselves, but they couldn't. Stone Cold could. So the characters started becoming real and characters that people could relate to in real life.
When you're putting that together, that's all you. That's your idea with the with the way he's walking and the fire and the smoke and stuff. That's like all your direction and just like, hey, we're gonna do attitude, attitude, attitude.
That part is yes. It had nothing to do with the development of the character or with the image you had of that character or the storylines of the matches. But Chris Chambers and I were tasked with doing the vignettes for Stone Cold Steve Austin with his match against Bret Hart, and we did them in a warehouse, of course, a different part of Connecticut than where I did Undertaker. And it was at night, and we let Stone Cold just go off. He wasn't quite polished at cutting promos just yet, and he was saying these promos, and they were pretty average at best, to be kind. So Chris and I said, let's take a 50-minute time out, and we started writing down these one-liners, and we fed Stone Cold these one-liners, and in post we overlapped them. We showed video of him speaking and not speaking. We had dogs in there, and these four vignettes were the first time you heard the glass break and his new song. And when Stone Cold saw those, he was like in awe. He's like, wow, you had barking dogs in that. I don't even remember the barking dogs. Well, there were no barking dogs. We took stock footage and put them in there, made them black and white.
Right.
So I think Stone Cold seeing those spots, the way we made them short, succinct, and like a bunch of one-liners, helped him become a better promo speaker inside the ring.
Wow, that's awesome, man. And you guys are like not assisting him, but you are. I mean, you're really, really helping him along and helping his character and
Yeah.
helping him develop himself. I mean, that's amazing.
Well, he cut that one great promo, well, you quote your Bibles and your Psalms, well, John 16, well, Austin 3:16 says, I just whipped your ass. So Chris and I are like, well, this guy's good. We don't need to write anything for him. And we end up having to write something for him. So
Right.
that kind of like shocked us at first. That was like a disconnect. It's like, we saw this guy on TV 2 months ago, and now here he's talking about things that are so like banal and common, and just like not very good.
Right.
So that was like, a joy being able to help bring that character to life by him seeing what we did with the stuff that we shot.
You put the S in front of Hitman, and that's my thoughts on Bret Hart. All those lines, which are great. Was that your line that you
Yeah,
gave to? Oh,
that was
okay.
my line.
That was a good one. That's a good
I
line.
know. I wish I could take credit for it, but that wasn't my line.
When you look at just like setting up Attitude Era, obviously that kind of takes WCW and puts them to the side, and obviously they take a big run. How much like does Vince like give you credit for Attitude Era? Because I feel like so many guys throughout time try to take, oh, I did this for that, I did this Attitude Era, but when you're actually putting those videos together, I mean, that's you got to take some credit for the Attitude Era, big time.
I take credit for it because I think that had we not created that, and there were a couple people with me, Chris Chambers, to name one. We had the vision, Kevin Dunn as well, and we did this without Vince's blessing. But I think had we not done that and pushed the envelope, the company might not be around today. But eventually became a collective group. Vince and Vince Russo writing these edgy storylines, people doing these characters. It wasn't just Chris and I. We started that, and kept on adding to that. But like everybody came on board and became unified. So I don't think Vince will ever give me credit for the Attitude Era, especially since I left him back in 2003
Right.
for a short sabbatical.
How much collaboration did you have with Russo?
Um, Very little back then. I had more collaboration with him at TNA Wrestling, but he was on the writing team with Vince, and I was in production. So there was little collaboration. Vince did a great thing though, Vince Russo. The Super Bowl spot that we did, where the wrestlers are walking around, through the offices, and like everything is going to hell. My original idea was have that be Vince and Vince McMahon. And Vince Russo goes, no, that should be the different wrestlers doing that. So that changed that spot significantly. Same idea, same copy, but instead of it being Vince as a spokesman, it was 6 different wrestlers saying the different lines.
That's a great commercial too. I mean, awesome.
One of my
Like,
favorites, yeah.
is that one of the things where you're like, wow, Super Bowl, holy moly, we're doing a Super Bowl commercial now? I mean, like, you made a big thing, you Super Bowl commercial.
Well, you said did I have any pressure? And I said, not after the first Raw opening. I did with the Super Bowl a little bit. But then
Right.
once I got that idea in like one day, it's like, oh, this is going to be fun. It's going to be a blast. And I think it was voted the top number 5 spot by some magazine company that rates like TV ads during the Super Bowl.
Well,
They're
for
number
me,
5 out of 100 and something that aired in the Super Bowl game.
to me, it was number one. I mean, I love that
Yeah.
spot. That's such a good creative spot and an awesome way to showcase WWE and all the wrestlers. Obviously, not just McMahon. I mean,
Yeah.
all the wrestlers. It was a great showcase.
Yeah. And so the following year, we did 3 spots for the Super Bowl. But it wasn't my original idea. My original idea was for Roddy Dangerfield, and we're going to go earn respect one household at a time. And it started with Vince McMahon for the first spot that was going to air during the pre-show. It was like, talking about how great WWE is and how they're trying to earn respect, one thing at a time. And meanwhile, wrestlers are like, busting through people's homes and doing pile drivers and body slams and spears on them. And then the crane shot rise and there's fires. And the spot that was going to air in the Super Bowl was Vince knocking on Roddy Dangerfield's door. And Roddy Dangerfield saying, I can't get no respect. And like slam the door in Vince's face. Vince goes, get him. And all these wrestlers attack the house. We had this set built in Hollywood on a very famous soundstage. And we invested a lot of money in this. I mean, well into 6 figures. And I was told 2 days beforehand that Vince didn't want me to shoot the spot. And I told Kevin Dunn, I'm like, Kevin, we've already paid for 95% of this. Let me just shoot it. We can't get this money back. We had the special effects team from Armageddon, the movie, doing the
Oh,
special effects for this thing. I said, but it's already paid for, basically. Let's just do it. And Kevin said, no, Vince doesn't want to do it. And it's because a certain wrestler, I think, got Vince's ear, and he wasn't the feature of that commercial. So that's why Vince decided to cancel that in the 11th hour. And that was probably the lowest moment of my career there, knowing that we had such an awesome spot with Rodney Dangerfield and that it would never be brought to life. Do you want to know who that person was? By the way, I think who told Vince that he didn't want to do that spot?
oh, yes, yes.
I'm not going to tell you. No. Sorry. Yeah, I teased you, but no. I'm going to take the
Do you
high
know
road.
who it was?
And I think I do, but I don't want to say it.
Oh, but not 100% sure. You know who it was.
I'm pretty sure. We'll have this conversation offline.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Forget. But with Vince though, he didn't care about losing the money. He just didn't want to do it. Like the money didn't matter to him.
We were making so much money back then, it didn't matter to him. So yeah. But then again, the pressure is on me that now I got to come up with, different ideas at the 11th hour. Because I think we were 1 week away from the deadline of getting that to the network for them to approve it. So now we had to ask for an extension. It was going to take me another week to come up with a new concept, another week to get it together, to shoot it, and to edit it. So that's when I felt pressure. But I first had to go through the period of sadness first, knowing that this could have been one of the greatest things we ever did, and we never did it. And we were that close to doing it. It was already paid for, but we never did it. So the pressure was on, okay, what do I do instead of? And that's when we did the beauty pageant spot that aired in the Super Bowl.
Okay. It's just interesting. Like, screw it. I paid, $100,000. Don't worry about it. You know what I mean? It's like, what?
I wish I had that money, don't you? I mean, it'd be great.
Yeah. Like, where it doesn't matter. Yeah, that's crazy. But to me, my favorite, the My Sacrifice videos. Creed, My Sacrifice. Was that your brainchild? Did you put those together?
I don't think I did that one. No. Was that a video package?
Yep. So
Yes.
it was
We
a
had 2
collection.
really talented producers there. Adam Panucci is one. Chris Chambers was another. So it might have been them. I pretty much did the commercial spots, the image spots, the talent vignettes, and all the openings for the pay-per-views. I did every pay-per-view opening for about 10 straight years. And that's what I loved doing. That was the outside-the-box stuff. But I didn't have anything to do with that Creed video.
Oh, those were good. It was like almost like a series of packages, and
Yeah,
Austin would say, and then it would be My Sacrifice with that song.
yeah,
It's just funny because now Creed is popular again because of the
yeah,
Texas Rangers,
yeah. That's ironic.
which is nuts because now they're doing a world tour again in 2024, literally because of the Texas Rangers. Like, wow,
Yeah,
oh my God,
yeah,
unbelievable.
it
What
is.
is what is like your favorite just pay-per-view opening as far as that? Would it be Highway to Hell, or is there some other like pay-per-view openings that you've done?
Um, if I was a parent and you ask who's my favorite child, I would say I have many. I don't
Mm.
have a single one. And there were many I did for the pay-per-views. Two that stand out were the Freddie Fellini ones. I'm not sure if you saw any of those. That's where it was like a black and white movie opening based off the famous movie director Freddie Federico or something like that. Some German producer who did like black and white silent movies. And there was no audio on this except like music, and they were like bizarre out there spots. Those are my favorites. Um, the commercials I did where it was like the wrestlers, fish out of water.
Yep.
The spot for No Mercy where Kane was at the plates, and we had all these like plays that look like Yankees that were lining up. We had the voice of the Yankees, John Sterling, saying, "It all comes down to this:
Mm.
bottom of the ninth for the big red machine." And the camera pans over, and there's Kane at bat. He takes a mighty swing. We show from three different angles. We put an explosion sound effect like it's a major home run. The crowd stands up, and then we cut and see it's a dribble to the pitcher. And John Sterling goes, "This could be it." And then all of a sudden, the pitcher is speared by Edge. The first baseman is taken out by somebody else. The Hardy brothers come off ladders and take out the second baseman, the shortstop. Farouk takes out the third baseman with the garbage can. And W wins. W wins. Spots like that, spots that were takeoff on Jaws with Brock Lesnar, where people are like shark, shark, and we shot it in the same style that Jaws was shot in. And all of a sudden, you see halfway through Brock Lesnar running anti against the wave, people running away from the water into the water and body slamming that shark. Whenever I did spots that were the wrestlers like fish out of water, those are my favorite spots.
Stuff that they're not used to doing, different
Yeah, but
stuff,
but there's so many. So
outside
to
the
say
box.
to claim a favorite, I really can't. I mean, you could put the legend spot up there because it touched Vince that much, and because I love Freddie Blassie so much, we were close. But there were so many I did that I can't say like that's my favorite thing I did of all time.
Yeah, that Legends one, that's a good one. That'll tear your heartstrings if you're an old school fan. Obviously, with Vince too, obviously, but
Yeah, and
even
me
as a
being
fan,
a close friend with Freddie Blassie, it's like it'll tear me up watching that right now, knowing that he's passed, almost 20 years ago.
yeah, amazing stuff. So why leave WWE? What was the reasoning behind the exit?
That's a very good question. When I first got there, they were hitting rock bottom and hit rock bottom, and WCW started kicking our ass, and that's when I brought the sports mentality there and started doing things differently. So we were like a core group of four or five. We felt like a family that were changing everything, and like this small group of people turned this whole brand around, and it became the number one rated show in all of cable television. And then it became very corporate. They hired people to come on board that quote unquote knew better than us because they worked in real sports or they worked for MMA or something. And I can no longer talk to Vince directly. I had to go through layers to get to Vince. I felt disconnected since when we went corporate, they became very conservative. They didn't want me to do any cutting edge ideas or like controversial things. They wanted to rein me back in and take my R-rated stuff away and make it PG. They wanted to sanitize everything. So this small group built this great phenomenon, and then all these people come on board and think they know better than us, and we felt like we were no longer part of the creative process. We felt like we were beneath these people. So I lost my appetite for that because I felt like I couldn't do and unleash the creativity I have within me out there, and just became very unsatisfying. It took me about a year to make the decision to finally leave, but I finally did because my heart was telling me I need a break. I don't know why. I just need a break right now. I need to go somewhere.
When you look at it too, you can't take creative juices out of the guy who's making all these awesome videos and just, he's like a ball of creativity. You can't poke the
Well,
balloon and make it burst.
they did. Here's one example. I was doing a 30-second commercial for WrestleMania, and these experts said, let's add a bonus added thing, like buy WrestleMania, and you get this free bandana, with the Undertaker's logo on that. And I fought this and lost because I have 30 seconds. The tag page is 6 seconds. This bonus added thing is another 9 seconds. I now have 13 or 14 seconds to like convey emotion in a promo, which you can't do. But B, it's like, so you're telling the viewer that WrestleMania isn't good enough, that if you buy it, you're going to get this bandana as well? I mean, to me, that was like crazy. It's
Right.
like you're basically diminishing WrestleMania. Okay, You're not sure if you want to buy it? Well, if you do, you get this free headband or bandana. And it's just like, that blew my mind away. And I fought that and I lost every time to the corporate people that were now running the show.
Seems like WrestleMania's got to sell itself. You shouldn't be giving away
It
freebies.
sells itself. You don't need to put anything on there. You don't need to say, buy it and get this free, bottle of water with, your purchase or whatever.
Yeah.
It's WrestleMania, for crying out
Yeah.
loud.
It was like WCW in its dying days. If you bought the pay-per-view, sometimes they'd send you a T-shirt, I remember.
Yeah.
And you have to send what size T-shirt you want. It's like, well, WWF didn't have to do that because you're ordering every pay-per-view because, they're kicking ass and taking names.
True.
So I guess you decide like, okay, I'm done with wrestling, or do you immediately jump to TNA, or does TNA immediately try to get you as soon as you're a free agent?
I told Kevin Dunn that I wanted, excuse me, that I need a sabbatical. And he goes, for how long? And he thought I was joking at first. So for the first 2 minutes, I thought I was joking. I said, I'm serious. I need that break. And he says, okay, I'll give you 90 days. You can have 3 months off. We'll pay you. And I said, Kevin, you can't give me a date because I'll be counting down 90, 89, 88, 87. And I said, Kevin, it might be 2 months. It might be 6. I don't know. I just need a break. Maybe I'm burnt out. Maybe I'm not happy with the way the company is right now structured, but I just need a break. And then 5 months later, after I traveled cross country twice in that time of my life, they tried to get me back there. And Kevin offered me a bunch of things that were working for John Gaburek, who was, now above me. He was below me before I left there. And I said, I'll make you a deal. Let me come back in part-time. And by part-time, I mean, let me work 2 weeks a month, or let me work 6 months on a special project or something. So it's not those 70-hour weeks again. And Kevin Dunn said, nope, it's full-time or it's no time. I said, I can't commit to full-time right now. He said, I guess it's no time then. Let's have some fun. Let's go out drinking. And then I wrote a book in North Carolina, just like 1 year in right now. And Jeff Jarrett called me and he said, David, I heard you traveled across this country twice. And I said, yes. He goes, have you been to Nashville? And I said, never. And he goes, come Monday, we'll talk, we'll have lunch. And you can check Nashville off your box of all the cities you've seen. So I went there. And I saw the passion on Jeff's sleeve. He wore his heart right there. And I knew that he wanted me to join. So I made a deal with Jeff where I would join just for 3 months to help them launch their first monthly pay-per-view Victory Road, because back then they were doing those Wednesday night specials for $9.95. This was them transitioning to the once a month 3-hour mega pay-per-views. And it was a 3-month thing. That was it. And they got so upset up north that I decided to join that they called me traitor and would not let anybody talk to me, anybody call me, nothing. So I lost all my friends there because they were afraid of going against who were like, oh, David joined the enemy. He's out to get us. I wasn't out to get them. I mean, this company was so small that I joined. I was just trying to help them get to launching a major pay-per-view per month. And it was only a 3-month deal. It was a part-time deal. And they got livid and they took their vengeance out on me by hurting my father, by taking away his Legends check. And when they did that, I called Jeff and said, Jeff, I've had a month off. I want to come back full time and make you guys succeed and get you guys a television deal. And that's what I did. I came back, I worked full time, and I got a TV deal on Spike.
Awesome, nice. Kind of sucks the way it happened with them and your
Yes.
dad and everything, but it kind of in a weird way. I mean, I guess it kind of helped launch TNA to their next level, if you will.
Yes, and it motivated me again. It gave me that spark again because I felt like, okay, TNA has a lot of work to do, but it feels like WWE back in the early 1990s before we started to like take off. I would rather build stuff than tear things down. I would rather join a company that is low and help it grow than join a company that is already on top. And that's why I enjoy going to TNA after being at WWE, because I was helping this upstart company become successful. And we had many great years in the 2000s until things went, down. But we had many good years where we were getting great ratings. We were getting more viewers per week than AEW and WWE are right now in this current day and age. And there's reasons for that with streaming options, so many things to watch. But we were getting 1.6 and 1.7 every single Thursday night. We were drawing in 2.5 million viewers. I think AEW draws in like less than 1 million or something. It's just,
Yes.
we did some great things, but we never got credit for that. Even though we had a great roster, there was a time where we had Kurt Angle, we had Jeff Hardy, we had Ric Flair, we had the TNA originals like AJ Styles and Samoa Joe and Chris Daniels and Frankie Kazarian. It's just like, we really had a great time where I thought we were the best product out there. And I think one of the big mistakes was when Dixie Carter decided to go head to head on Monday against Raw. And I'm like, Dixie, I don't like that idea. And she goes, why? And I said, because we're in a studio right now. And they're in this 15-seat arena. So it kind of be like if you go back and forth, you'll be seeing a Ferrari and then a 1969 Volkswagen Bug, a Beetle.
Yep.
It's just like the optics going back and forth, a big crowd, small crowd. It's going to really scream out that, oh, this is a low-end company. Even though I thought we had better talent and better in-ring stuff going on, it was better when it wasn't head-to-head. Had we been in those arenas and selling out 10,000 seats, sure, I was all for that. But we were still in a soundstage in Orlando. And that's why I was against that. And our ratings tanked within 6 weeks.
When you look at it, any regrets though, like as far as going to TNA and the way it ended with WWE, or no?
I have no regrets in life about anything. It's because I always find like a mistake that we make, as long as you learn the lesson from that mistake, it's not a mistake. You learned a lesson.
Right.
Everything I did happened for a reason. I'm probably professionally the most happiest I've ever been in my career right now. Working with Impact Wrestling and a great locker room and a great leadership team. So I don't regret doing anything, because everything I did that I might regret got me to where I am right now today. And I am just filled with joy and energy. At my old age, brother, I still have a lot of energy, a lot of creativity, a lot of ambition, a lot of things I want to accomplish.
Is it a full circle kind of moment now that it's TNA again? Do you feel that?
Yeah, but there was a great vibe with TNA. And when they changed it to Impact Wrestling, the locker room, the backstage was so poor and so bad that it probably needed a name change at that one time, but people still equated that with TNA. And now we're kind of embracing back to the beginning and the time we had our glory years. Because when Anthem bought TNA from Impact, from Dixie Carter, I'm sorry, it was 2017, and the locker room morale was horrible. In 2018, Anthem and Scott just cleaned house, got rid of all the bad eggs and all the negative attitudes. And when I came back, I was furloughed for 1 year. In 2019, it's like, this locker room is amazing. This creative team is amazing. The positive vibes backstage, and I swear about this to this day, it's incredible. It's a whole new company right now. And I think everything is great, from the leadership to the talent to the locker room. Everybody wanted to help everybody else out with their matches, to the product itself. I think it's a great product right now. And I hope we get more eyeballs on it.
Man, it just seems like when you look at it, you almost wish more eyeballs were on it, because TNA seemed, or Impact really, it seemed like they kind of turned the corner a while ago. It's just like getting everyone else to kind of, notice it again, kind of thing.
Yes. And unlike AEW, we have storylines. And some of our storylines have a 3-month arc, a 6-month arc, or a 1-year arc. But we have storylines and we follow through on them. Back in the bad days of TNA, when it was going downhill, they would start a storyline like just the next week, just scrap it. They didn't like the way the ratings looked on that storyline. It's like they never gave things time to grow and to evolve and emerge. And now we are doing that. So it's like, you'll see something that happens today, and then you'll think, oh my God, that seed was planted 6 months ago. I didn't even know that they had a 6-month plan in the storyline that just unfolded.
So what's your current position with them right now? Are you like director, producer, or what's the role?
I direct the live and the tape shows in the truck. It's a multi-camera shoot. I also work on the creative promos that we do with Eric Tompkins. Eric Tompkins is probably the most creative guy I know. I pass my baton of creativity to Eric Tompkins. That's how good he is. So I work with him on the cold openings for the pay-per-views and on select shoots and on commercial and branding stuff that we do. But Eric Tompkins is now taking the lead on that. Eric Tompkins is a head of post-production, probably the most talented, most creative man out there today in the world of wrestling. And I even put him right now, he is me 10 or 15 years ago.
Wow. The high
Not that I
praise.
can't do that, but he's taken it to a different level, and that's
High
great.
praise, though.
Yeah, it is high praise. Eric Tompkins deserves it.
Big shoes to fill. Big
Yeah.
shoes right there. Yeah. So as we hit the wind down, we head towards the finish here. Give us one last push for the book.
Okay, the book is called My Dad, My Dying Son, SUN. And my dad was my inspiration, my mentor, the light of my life. That's why I say son and spell it SUN. He also kind of was in his end years very dependent upon me. So in many ways, he was kind of like my son. But we had an incredible bond, unlike one that anybody else had ever seen. Even Mike Tenay said, David, I've seen great father-son bonds, and the one between you and Papa Lou is tremendous. It's on a whole different level. So it's about our bond, our love, the loss, and also stories of him in the sports world, me in the wrestling world, how our careers intersected at one point as well. So it's a combination great moments in sports, wrestling, and entertainment history, as well as the love and connection between a father and a son, and the sadness from the one you love the most, finally passes.
Give us the website and information of where everyone could buy the book.
Absolutely. The website is My Dad, My Son, SUN, mydadmyson.com. And that will lead you to a link on Amazon, or you can go directly to amazon.com and just Google my name or the name of the book and find it there as well.
How about you? Where can everybody find you on social media?
I'm very much not on social media, but I'm on Instagram as Sahadi3, and I'm still on Facebook, just David Sahadi. You all can find me there. But I need to start using social media again now that I got this book out. The problem with me was that I was so into social media when it first came out. I mean, I remember the days of MySpace that I was
Yes.
on it for like 5 or 6 hours a day. And there comes a point where the shiny new toys, after 10 years, they're not as shiny anymore. They're not as fun. So I only post when got a message to say or something important to do.
Okay, nice, awesome. But everybody, definitely check out the book, David. Thank you so much. Been an honor. Appreciate you coming on.
Thank you for having me on here, John. It was an honor and my pleasure. I appreciate you.